Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Timeout with Tackle What's Next, where we speak to athletes and executives about how sport has changed and influenced their athletes' lives and the lessons they've learned in life and taken to life after sports. I am so excited to be back. Our first episode of 2022. Hard to believe we're already, 12 days in, but we have an awesome guest for you here tonight. I am your host, Danielle Berman. If you've never been to a Timeout before, I am the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, where we help athletes find purpose and create impact in life outside of the game. Thanks for being here with us tonight. And tonight we're talking to Quentin Williams. He's a former student athlete playing not one but two sports at Northwestern University. He played football and baseball. He got his master's in sport management and was drafted into Major League Baseball. Now, Quentin now is the founder of world-class leadership training, and he ended up developing his own world-class method after struggling with post-concussion syndrome. He had a lot of anger and confusion that he was dealing with, and he wanted to support others. I'm excited to dig in with him tonight about that. And then after seeing that lack of opportunity for men to feel safe expressing fears and emotions, he created this program to coach current and retired male athletes and really focus on bringing clarity to those struggling or recovering after concussions. So I definitely am so excited to speak to Quentin. He does a ton of coaching, development, group retreats, team training. So I'm going to see he's here. I'm going to bring him on. We're going to dig into all this really good stuff here and get going. So thanks. Really excited to be back with another Timeout in 2022. Hello. How's it going?
Hey, Danielle, I'm here. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Where are you calling in from? Where are
San
you?
Diego. San Diego, yeah.
Lovely weather, I'm hoping, for you.
It is lovely. I won't lie. It's lovely. We're very lucky here. You're in DC? Is that right?
Yeah, yep,
Yeah,
in DC.
cool.
It was warmer today, 40 degrees-ish, so, we're...
That's nice. There's still a little bit of sun, I think, shining in from the window there. Maybe the sun's going down. I don't know.
It's dark already, but there's light in front of me, so that way you can see me. But yeah, it's winter, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Well,
winter.
thanks. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to dig into your journey and the work you're doing now. And I kind of want to start right at the beginning. When did you first experience sports? What do you remember, like, as a kid, sports meaning to you? Like, what sport did you pick up first? Like, tell us a little bit about how sports came into your life.
It's so funny. I was actually recently reflecting on this, and I also have my clients reflect on this too. Like, when did you realize you were good at sports? And for me, like, I was actually a pretty artistic kid. Like, I loved like playing around with paint by numbers and those sorts of things. I thought I'd be an artist. I thought I'd be like playing guitar, like on a stage at this point. But sports found me. I found out I was gifted in baseball first. I remember when the coaches were gathered around me at the first organized baseball practice I ever went to. They started gathering around me, and I couldn't tell if like they were gathered around me for a bad reason or a good reason.
Right.
And they like interrupt me from playing catch, on the outfield line. And, they said like, "Oh, Quentin's got a good arm. Wow, really nice. Can you do that again?" I'm like, okay, and I it wasn't like I had like a super unique life up until that point. But I think, at the age of 7, that's a big turning moment when you realize you're good at something and you have just like a natural gift. Mm-hmm. So I built on that. I had, luckily I also was a little bit bigger for my age. So I would also play football later that year. And I didn't have as like big of aspirations or even like projections. Like, my coaches didn't think I would be that good at football, but I was just bigger. Mm-hmm. And I really tried. I think it kind of became a chip on my shoulder. Like, I actually really wanted to prove them wrong. And so, I ended up playing 2 sports in college, and that's my story. I think playing 2 sports was a real blessing because it actually cross-trained me. I think I became better at both sports by doing both as long as I did. But yeah, 7 years old was when I learned, and, never looked back.
Yeah. I love that you said sports found you, because I think sometimes it really is like kids explore what's fun, right? It's just fun stuff you get involved in, and it's being around other kids and being able to be outside and all of those things. That's really sometimes where sports finds you, is just having a good time, and then it's going from there. Now, you mentioned playing in college. You mentioned kind of never looking back. So what impact has sports made on you, your life, who you are? Tell us a little bit about what it's meant to you.
Well, I think it's great that I said that. With like, sports found me. I don't think I've ever really been able to get sports out of my system, really off my back, I would say. So you mentioned I have a sports master's degree in sports management, and that was a tongue twister. I have a master's degree in sports management, but I actually only got that degree for the business components. I figured I have one more year of eligibility. What can I get done in a year? In my 5th year in college, and it was sports management. And lo and behold, in that sports management program, I learned about all the troubles that a lot of former football players were going through at that time. That was really like the first kind of mental health scare that I would say the sports world experienced, at least in my experience. It was front and center for me, which was like the concussion crisis. This is back in like 2012 when it was first starting to take hold. And since then, I think thankfully a lot of people have been able to speak up about their mental health struggles and what they do to stay, on top of their game when it comes to mental performance and mental wellness. But I never planned on working in sports, and I don't love sports. Like I really mean it when I say sports found me. Like I'm not a sports fanatic. I don't like the term fanatic, because if you're fanatical about something, like, what's the point, And the thing is, like, I always tried to use sports as there was a point, It wasn't just about winning or losing or who can I beat out or how can I be the best. I think that actually was a strength of mine. I actually had a bigger why behind why we would do things, by the book, why the little things made such a difference. And that reason which was instilled in me as a young kid, is like, this translates into life. This translates. Like, you're living life. The way we do one thing is the way we do most things. I've learned that from doing yoga and all these different sports after sport. Like, I've realized how the way that we show up in one area is often the way that we'll show up in most areas. So if you can train your mentality, your attitude, your fight, your grit on the field, I think you're really well prepared for life after. And so I always really didn't want to define myself as a jock. I wanted to be more than a jock. I wanted my jockness to fuel my life, right? I never really knew what that was going to be, but turns out I'm working in sports, and I'm helping people really cultivate that life of meaning and that bigger why as to why you would go out in the field. Why would you go and do this and pursue greatness, in sport? It's because you want to pursue greatness in life, right?
I love that comparison, because I think a lot of times there is that disconnect where you think because you've played sports, you have no experience that translates into real life. And I hear that a lot, is I've never had a job, or I don't have skills. Like, I've never worked before. And I love that you saw athletics so differently, as like a vehicle to get you where you wanted to go, and to give you these lessons that you knew you were going to need regardless of what you decided to do. And I think we should all look at sports that way, as it's a lesson teacher. It shapes character and it builds skills that all young people should be learning. So I appreciate you saying that, because I think a lot of people learn that way too late, that it translates. And I'm glad that you were able to utilize that. So tell me, how did you decide to take that knowledge and help other people? Like, what was that journey like, and why is it so important to you? What led you to say, hey, obviously the concussions that you were learning about and seeing the impact, but how did you go from, wow, I want to do something, to, okay, I'm starting this business and I'm going to be a coach, and like walk us through your mindset and just like how you actually got there?
Yeah, well, I want to be the first to say that I struggled coming out of sport. I didn't feel like myself without the football helmet on anymore. I didn't really feel like I could make the impact that I wanted to in the corporate world, at the startups that I worked at. And while I had my mission, I knew that I wanted to, fight concussions and I wanted to fight mental health, right? I had no idea how I was going to do it or what tools I was going to use to get that job done. And, I procrastinated for a long time because I really, I didn't have that belief in myself. I didn't have that swag to myself that I did on the field. And, it's strange to be a beginner at something, like working from a desk, doing sales for the first time.
Yeah.
They say that athletes are great for sales, but not all athletes are great for sales,
Right. No,
like
it's a personality thing, right? It's a personality thing.
Everyone thinks like an athlete's supposed to be good at sales because you're competitive and you can, cut off, I don't know, you can disregard the rejection or the losses and you can just focus on the next play. I could do that, but I had a hard time selling something that I didn't believe in, And so I was in sales for several years. I was in account management for 6. And I think I really learned through that whole process, I gained a lot of tools, but I want to now sell something that I really care about. And so I started getting to work developing something that I really cared about, which, was teaching people about the brain health and then the mental health of life after sport. So I do a bit of a mix of those two, right? I have a history of even post-concussion syndrome in my own experience. And so I know the differences between like what people think is CTE, what people think are the symptoms of post-concussion syndrome, what are the symptoms of just everyday life. Like I can digest that with people. And I also have a lot of things that I do that are kind of crazy that really help my brain, when it comes to like long-term health. Like I jump in ice tubs. I meditate for like 10, 20 minutes a day. I do a lot of things that are a little bit outside of the norm because my brain is outside of the norm. But beyond that, I really think that the hardware that we're using with our brain is even more important. Like really, how are we living life? And to really combat the mental health struggle, concussion or not, after sport, every athlete really has to tackle what's next. They really have to be ready for what is next and get their eyes on it and find the mentors and the people around them that are going to really support them to get after it, because like I found, I hadn't sought out the right mentors. I wasn't really ready to let the sport go. I hadn't sought out the right mentors. I had a decent idea of what I wanted to do, but I was a little too egotistical to go and like follow like, someone else and do what they did. Right. In a lot of ways, I kind of need an attitude adjustment, but I learned that. And over the last several years, I got to where I'm at. And, I've through asking someone to put a mirror in front of me and give me feedback, tell me the hard things that my ego doesn't want to hear, through putting myself into uncomfortable situations, having tough conversations I've been putting off for years, airing out, resentments, that have been on my mind for forever, talking about traumas that have been there since I was a kid, but never had many people to talk to about. This is what people call like the work, like you're doing the work. When you do this work, all these things pop up. Like, the work is just taking life seriously, it's, and that's what I really, I love working with people that are ready to take life seriously outside of sport.
Yeah. So many good things that you mentioned there. And one, going back to when you talked about, sales and why people always say, there are so many great translatable skills that athletes have to be successful in sales. But the most important thing about selling is belief that this is actually going to help them, belief that they actually want this, they could use this, right? And if you don't have that belief, if you're just selling something because it's a job that you have to pay the bills, you're probably not going to be successful unless you're just naturally amazing at selling.
Right.
And so I think that's a great point, that you have to be excited and believe in what you're doing before anybody else is going to be excited and believe in what you're doing. I mean, if I'm not excited to be here talking to you, no one's going to show up or tune in later on to check it out. And so I think the same thing for you, right? Like, if you're not going to believe and do the work that you're telling your clients and the athletes you work with to do, how are they going to know that you're in it with them and you're actually doing your own work? And I think that idea of doing the work, just being living life. Like, I think that's a big misconception that people think like at some point I'm going to be done. Like, I'm going to be like, I made it, I did it. And that's not what life is. It's a journey, and you're never going to be done working on yourself, and you're never going to be done transitioning, growing, tackling what's next, however you want to say it. Like, there's always something else to do, something else to work on. And so if you're just trying to check off boxes, you're going to get so burnt out so quickly, because to go back to your point, and this is what I wanted to ask you more about, is you said like your why is so much bigger than your sport or the day things you're doing. Your why is so much bigger. So I want to talk to you about why this balanced lifestyle that you're really opting in on, all of these non-traditional kind of routines that you're putting in, and the meditating and the ice tubs. Tell me about the why. Tell me about why you're doing this every day. And at the end of the day, tell us how other people can find that why for themselves. How did you find that why? I think is really the most important thing.
I love how you put that. The way that I found my why was finally slowing down. Slowing down. Thankfully, my master's program was at night. It wasn't in the middle of my crazy football schedule. It was at night. It was 3 hours. We'd get in, we'd get out. And that 3 hours was way more valuable than any 60-minute class I've ever been in, because you actually got to get in and digest the material. And that transgressed into, I explored yoga after football. And that's the complete opposite in many ways of the regimented order and strength that it takes to be in football. So for a while there, I just wanted nothing to do with the organized version of sport. I wanted my own artistic version of sport. And I think in that, I really found a lot of peace, a lot of calm, a lot of space, slowing down to actually cultivate what was really important to me. And that's why it's still a practice to me. It's always going to be a practice. You're right. You never get perfect at that. You never really train, to be a certain place. It's always a practice. Some days I don't meditate. Some days I don't pray. Some days I don't do breath work. Some days I don't jump in the ice tub. It's not like I have to. These are all just tools that help me get back to center, get back to that balance. Balance is a myth. I think balance is on a spectrum, somewhere in the middle. Right. And we all know when we're off. We're out of that spectrum. So, some of the things that I think are most important are slowing down, which is why meditation is so important. But I think that everyone has their own version of meditation. I'm not saying everyone should sit down and, do ohms for 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day. You could lay down. You could go run. You could go walk. You could be in nature. Find some way to connect to like your inner soul, really, right? Like I think that's the simplest way to put it. I'm not going to say God or spirit or your divine, being, right? I'm just talking about your soul. Like everyone here has a soul. We all have a soul. We all got soul. So take space to connect with that every day. And through that, it's funny, I actually connected with my soul today and my why on my run. I'm training for a half marathon, my first ever. It's my first foray back into like competitive sports in 10 years. So I'm excited about that. And it's bringing up this intensity with me that I think is really healthy for me. Because just as we can, be slow, and slow is powerful, sometimes we can get stuck in that, and we can get stuck in the sludge and the indecision. And so having this organized, regimented thing for me to push into, like I was on my run and I had this guy in my ear. The Nike Run Club app is amazing if you ever train for a half marathon. There's guys and girls all across the country are in your ear, like telling you like what you should do, what should be focused on, when to dig deep, when to actually coast, and when to actually stay where you're at. And like when they told me to dig deep, I actually thought about like I needed to dig deep. I needed to, like, because it was the last couple sprints I was on, and I dug into like, why am I doing the work that I do? Like, why do I exist? And it really forced me to pull into my soul, pull into my heart. Like, why am I running this thing? You know what I mean? Like, I could be doing anything else in the world. Like, why did I sign up for this? What does this represent for me? What it represents for me is the mental struggles that I've seen so many athletes go through. I've had former teammates of mine from high school take their lives, one of which was diagnosed with CTE.
Wow.
We see our favorite players. Junior Seau was a big one here in San Diego. He made a huge mark in this city. He's from here. He's from Oceanside, California. And I actually talked to one of his close friends just a couple weeks ago, and what he told me, and I'd love to get him onto your show too, because he used to run Junior's nonprofit. He had a very close relationship with Junior, and he knew Junior those last several years of his life, and he felt what Junior was going through, and he knew, he saw what I'm doing, what you're doing, and he said, wow, if stuff like this was around when Junior was, you know, on his decline, like, he would probably still be here.
Yeah, that's so powerful to think about. And to go back to your running example, you said, you know, what's the reason why I'm doing this? Like, why am I even doing the work? Yeah. And I think that's important. If you're doing the work just because you think you should, or because you're like, oh, I felt like doing this today. You also mentioned earlier, like, balance is a myth, and I 100% agree. It's about whatever you need to do that day that's going to help you find your center, like you said, but also just like get through what you need to get through. You know, you might not run every day. You might not walk 10,000 steps a day, but like maybe tomorrow you're going to do 20,000, and today you just need to rest, like whatever you need. But I think, to your point, it's about understanding yourself, connecting with you, and being able to reach yourself at all times to say, what do I need right now? Why am I doing this? Like, being able to reach that inner voice, that soul you were talking about, I think is so important. And I don't think we do that enough just as humans. We're just go, 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 go. Yeah. And we don't take the time that we need because all these competing distractions are yelling at us to do this or do that, or, you know, 5 tips to get to this, right? Like all of those kinds of things. So I feel like we're getting like an inside scoop of some of the things that you're doing in your workshops and your courses. So I know we have just a few minutes left, and I want to really talk to you about advice that you have for people that might be athletes that are thinking about graduating or retiring. Maybe they already have, and they're trying to kind of figure out their next move. What advice do you have for them on how to set yourself up for success outside of the game? Is there something that you did that you recommend, or maybe you don't recommend? You mentioned mentorship, but is there anything else that you think athletes right now should be thinking about? What can they start doing today to kind of prepare themselves for this journey that's going to continue, like we talked about, but, you know, to be successful on it?
Yeah, that's great. So I have a method that worked for me. Okay. And the way that it worked for me was, like, I was going through a lot of, you mentioned like earlier, frustration, anger, a lot of the moodiness that comes along with like what people think is CTE. Antonio Brown right now is like a classic example of like what people think what CTE looks like. I was going through some of those same sorts of like bouts with depression, with like anxiety, with moodiness, and I had post-concussion syndrome too. So I had headaches, I had nausea, I had all these different things. And what wasn't working for me was not taking action on the things that I really wanted to do. What was actually holding me back the most was procrastinating, holding back my thoughts, holding back my feelings, not having people to talk to. And so, like, this all culminated for me in developing a method called the World-Class Method. And it's what I used to dig myself out and put myself in a place to lead, to lead men where I do now. Like, I mostly coach men. I coach men through groups, through team environments as well, preparing some college and pro sport programming right now. I'm really excited about. But, in order to even step into that, I really had to remember who I was, And so the first step in my process is really remembering who you are, not who you were on the field, but who you are just naturally, right? Like who you've been since the beginning of time. It's always been there. And knowing who you are, now you can figure out where you want to go. And so then we come up with like what that clear vision is. That's a second step. My third step is really tapping into like, what are your habits? What are the things that help you get to where you really want to go? So, we tie in all the rigorous things that I do. Maybe there's things that people do that really support them. Like let's build off of those. But, what are your habits and what are you committed to? That's really gut check time. And then the last two pieces are really, really, really important. I think relationships are very heavily overlooked. I can say that from my perspective, right? Like I mentioned earlier, you mentioned networking being really important, right? Like I think that's a fancy word for just giving a crap about people, like that's really what it is. No one wants to network with someone who just wants to get your phone number and an email and a connection.
Just wants a job or something, right?
Yeah. No, networking starts in the locker room. If you're a current athlete, it starts in the locker room. Give a crap about your teammates. Give a crap about, why they're showing up or why they're not showing up. How are they doing mentally, emotionally, spiritually? What's their soul like right now? So if you want to practice at home, And I do think that translates into real life. That translates into business success. You and I wouldn't be on this call right now if we didn't have a relationship a year ago.
Exactly.
Right? And we're always trying to add value to each other's lives. And so I think that relationships are huge, and often a lot of athletes kind of stray away because they've been the leader, they've been the lonely one, the lone wolf at it all this time. And so finding the right mentors, finding the right tribe around you is really important. That's step number 4. And the last step is the uncomfortable action that you've been avoiding. Like I said, for me, that was uncomfortable conversations with friends that I felt like, had certain attitudes or, like weren't there for me the way that I wanted them, or I hadn't voiced my expectations clearly enough for them to be there the way that I wanted to. Or I wasn't stepping up to the plate and being the friend that I really wanted to be. Or family, right? We all have family stressors, and we have versions of ourselves that are shown to us when we're around family. It's why I hosted a couple workshops around the holidays called the Holiday Fix. Like, so many of us get triggered around our parents, around our some of our closest friends, and even our brothers and sisters. And so I was really trying to arm people with some tools to address those situations and get ahead of them. And there's some really simple things, like taking responsibility. But really, all that goes to say is that the uncomfortable conversations, like that's where freedom is. That's where the true liberation is. That's where the feeling of flow is getting uncomfortable. So that's the 5th and final step in my process. And, we got to do that throughout our lives. It's not something we just do in seasons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how it works. That's what worked for me, and it's still working. It's still a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it builds off each other. Like, I think that's really important. And as folks are thinking about what works for them, I love that you have these steps, but it's not do this one thing. It's do something that does this for you. And I think that's the idea, is it's going to be, there is a process you can use, but it's going to still be about you. You still need to understand yourself and what's going to work for you before this process can work for you, because what you're doing, Q, is different from what I'm going to need to do to get to my spot where I feel comfortable, in control, ready to tackle whatever I need to do.
Right.
And so I think that's important to remember too. So thank you for walking us through that. And I know we're over time, so I appreciate you giving us even extra time. But my last question for you is, what's next for your academy? You mentioned doing a couple workshops over the Christmas holiday. You mentioned some college or team opportunities. So tell us what's coming up. Tell us what's next for you. And of course, tell us how can we connect with you? How can we learn more about the different workshops, resources, courses you have? And if people want to reach out, how can they find you?
Yeah, perfect. So like I said, we do have some college programming coming out. I'm partnering up with Athlete Seau to do that. Which you're looped in on, but I would say, like, the big picture, guys, is I have a few ways that I support people and that you can get to work with me. The free way is jump onto my website. I actually just updated this. Go to athletearchetype.com. Athletearchetype.com, and that'll take you to a quiz. It's a 10-question quiz. Takes less than 5 minutes. It'll walk you through and give you an idea of what your athlete archetype was while you were playing sport. If you're a former athlete, were you were you the leader by example? Were you the vocal leader? Were you the leader that was more like the offensive lineman, defensive lineman, the unsung hero, right? Were you the playmaker on the field? And the key to this is that can translate into real life. And you can be a team captain from any area of the field, any area of the court. Anybody can be a team captain, not just the point guard or the center, right?
Yeah.
And so the mission of this quiz is to support people with understanding how do they show up on the field and on the court, and how can they capitalize on that and be a team captain in life after sport, in their career, in their relationships, use their leadership style to their advantage and really be successful. So check out athletearchetype.com. Take the 5-minute quiz. I'll give you a bunch of PDFs and emails afterwards that'll give you tons of information about how to make the most of your archetype. And then beyond that, I offer one-on-one coaching. I have a couple spots open for that. If that's of interest, there's a free call you can set up with me. But also I have a wait list right now open, and it'll be going up for sale in the next month. So get on the wait list if you want like early discounted pricing for my Wheelhouse program. Wheelhouse is my men's program for retired athletes. And I'm a guy. I know what it's like to be in a locker room, and I try to recreate and deepen that locker room experience in real life after sport, and support guys with all the emotional, social, habits, vision-based tools that it takes to really be successful outside of sport. Because we all miss our team. We all miss having a coach and having that constant feedback that we had in sport. So this is a way to put a container and structure around your life after sport the way that you had in your career. So awesome. To access that, go to my website or check out wheelhouse12.com. So the two websites I can drop them to you was athletearchetype.com for the quiz and wheelhouse12.com for the group program.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put those somewhere in the notes for people to find. And I just want to say thank you for taking so much time with us tonight. It was awesome to chat. I love what you're doing. Obviously, like you said, it's been great to be able to work with you and collaborate over the last year, and even just connect and catch up and all of that. So I'm excited for what's coming up. And thanks again for being here and sharing so much great advice. I mean, I think a lot of people will get a lot from this, and just connecting with themselves and the importance of understanding yourself in the process of figuring out what's next, or figuring out, what else you are. So really appreciate you taking the time and being here with us.
Thank you, Danielle. I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. I think it does start with you and understanding who you are. This is not my process, or anyone's process should not be dictating what you do or how you do it. It's about really cultivating who you are as an individual, what your real unique identity is outside of sport. So kudos to you for doing what you do. Love what you're up to. Can't wait to be a part of it this year. And thank you for having me on.
Yeah, likewise. Can't wait for more collaborations. Thanks for being here, and have a great night. We'll see everybody next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.